Welcome! This is what has been going on the Sun today, 6th of April 2011. From a flare point of view, the Sun has been very disappointing. The X-ray background has dropped to B2 level and we've only had a few minor B flares. However, let's take a look at the sunspots. 1183 is approaching the west limb. There's been some development near the lead spot of 1184 and that might actually produce some activity over the next day or two. 1185 is rotating onto the disk and showing some signs of minor growth. There's a region following it just coming over the east limb, which will probably be numbered in the next day or two. The region that I mentioned yesterday in the southeast definitely has some spots, and I'm surprised that it has not been numbered as yet, but it just may get numbered in time for it to rotate off the disk. But we will be able to follow its development with the Stereo A spacecraft. Looking at the white light and magnetic movies, we can see the development in region 1184 quite clearly. Just keep your eye on the leading spot of that region, you will see a new spot develop. From the magnetic movie you can see it's an opposite polarity, so that is a promising sign for flare activity. The Helium-2 movie shows the prominences on the limb and the filaments on the disk, showing their usually dynamic motions. And the Coronal movie, even though it's supposedly quiet, shows dynamic motion just about everywhere. Remember that prominence I was talking about yesterday, down in the southeast? Well, let's take a closer look at that. Here's a 24-hour movie of just that area, taken in the Helium-304 line. You can see how large and dynamic that region is. This is what's known as a polar crown filament. Filaments are cool, dense material suspended high in the hot coronal plasma by magnetic fields. Polar crown filaments are famous for erupting away from the Sun, and this one looks so dynamic and large, I think that any time in the next few days this could erupt, producing a spectacular coronal mass ejection. So let's keep an eye on that. Filaments are so dense and cool that they actually absorb the coronal emissions at 171 angstrom shown in this movie, so you can actually see it's a dark filament. You'll also notice that there's a rarefied volume around the filament. That's called a coronal cavity, and it's formed by the magnetic field in the area. So let's keep an eye on that in the next few days and see if I'm right and it erupts. Hooray! We actually have some data from the SOHO coronagraph. But unfortunately the Sun, of course, is quiet and has only produced a couple of minor CMEs in that time. First I'll show 3 repeats of the small field of view coronagraph, the C2, and then 3 repeats of the large scale coronagraph, C3. But there's not much going on there. Looking at the whole Sun, we can see there's a major region coming back, and if you noticed in the X-ray movie earlier, there are some fairly large and bright loops on the east limb of the Sun, which probably are the return of region 1175. On the Earth, the auroral arc remains weak, with the KP index varying between 1 and 3. So in summary then, the sunspot numbers dropped to 65. However, remember there are a couple of spotted regions that haven't been counted in this, so perhaps the number should be a little higher. The X-ray background has fallen to B2, reflecting how quiet it is. The radio sun remains stubbornly bright at over 100 solar flux units. The solar wind speed has increased to over 500 km per second, so there might be a slightly better chance of getting aurora now. And the KP index is classified as being quiet. As far as the forecast is concerned, I still think there's some chance of getting C flares, but with increasingly lower probability of getting larger flares than that. Because of the dynamic polar crown filament that I talked about earlier, I think there's a good chance of getting a coronal mass ejection, and a fairly substantial one in the next few days. The freshening of the solar wind speed at Earth gives us a better chance of having an aurora, but the chance of getting a significant geomagnetic storm is quite low. Remember that all this data is available to you too. All you have to do is go to the SOHO, Stereo, or Solar Dynamics Observatory websites, and the same data that I'm showing here is available in real time. For forecasts, go to the NOAA Space Weather Prediction Center website, and they have real-time forecasts available for you there. Take a look at the data yourself and see if you can do a better forecast than I can. That should not be hard. Why don't we have a challenge? If you come up with your own forecast, post it in the comments section below, and we'll see who does best. That's it for today. Keep safe. Bye for now.